I'm Linda, 36, female. I live in a quiet city, in a small apartment above a flower shop that always makes the streets smell like spring. After a decade in the public library system, I cashed out my savings and my modest inheritance to open a bookstore, The Last Page. It was my dream, a sanctuary of paper and ink, but that dream was almost stolen by the one person I thought was helping me build it. This is the story of how my best friend and store manager tried to push me out of my own life, not realizing she was playing a game where I already knew the ending. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. They say you shouldn't mix business with friendship, but with Jessica, it felt different. We'd known each other since college, and when I announced my plan to open a bookstore, she was my biggest cheerleader. At the time, she was stuck in a dead-end corporate job, miserable and complaining about her boss. So when I offered her the store manager position, it felt like a perfect solution for both of us. I wasn't a business expert, I was a librarian who loved books. Jess, with her business degree and sharp, confident energy, was supposed to be the operational brains. For the first 2 years, it was idyllic. We were a team. I curated the book collection, managed community events, and handled the ordering. Jess managed the staff, the finances, and the day-to-day logistics. We'd spend long hours painting shelves, laughing over inventory spreadsheets, and dreaming about future expansions. The Last Page wasn't just my store. I felt it was our store. I paid her a generous salary, well above the industry standard, and trusted her implicitly. I gave her access to all our business accounts, supplier contacts, and even the keys to my apartment in case of an emergency. She was more than an employee, she was my chosen family. The bookstore was located in a beautiful old brick building on a street that was slowly becoming trendier. The building itself was owned by a family trust that my grandfather had set up decades ago. My parents, who managed the trust, had given me an incredibly generous long-term lease agreement. The rent was practically symbolic, a kindness to help me get my dream off the ground. This was a crucial detail that I never bothered to explain to anyone, including Jess. As far as the world was concerned, I was Linda, the owner of The Last Page. Everyone just assumed that meant I owned the building, too. It was a simple, harmless assumption, and I never saw a reason to correct it. Why would I? Jess often joked about how valuable the property was becoming. One day, Linda, you're going to be sitting on a gold mine, she'd say, tapping the antique countertop. This corner lot is prime real estate. I'd just smile and nod, thinking she was happy for me, for us. I saw her ambition as a positive force, something that would help our little bookstore thrive. I never imagined that when she looked at our dream, she wasn't seeing the books on the shelves or the happy customers. She was seeing the bricks and mortar, the land beneath our feet, and calculating its worth. She saw a prize she wanted for herself, and she was willing to do anything to get it. My trust in her was the foundation of our friendship and our business. I had no idea she was planning to tear it all down, brick by brick. The change was subtle at first, like a page slowly yellowing with age. It began about 6 months before everything fell apart. Jess started taking meetings that she was vague about. Just networking, she'd say with a dismissive wave of her hand, trying to get us some better press. She began dressing differently, swapping her comfortable sweaters for sharp, expensive-looking blazers. Her conversations became peppered with business jargon and talk of leveraging assets and maximizing value. I chalked it up to her embracing her role, becoming the business mind I needed her to be. I was proud of her. In hindsight, I was a fool. Then came the small, strange incidents. An important supplier would call, confused, saying Jess had tried to renegotiate our long-standing contract for a new entity. When I asked her about it, she'd laugh it off as a misunderstanding. Silly me, I must have used the wrong terminology. Don't worry, I smoothed it over. She'd assure me I believed her. Our part-time bookseller, Mark, a sharp and observant grad student, was the first to notice something was truly wrong. He came to me one afternoon, looking uncomfortable. Linda. He started, lowering his voice. I don't want to cause trouble, but I overheard Jess on the phone yesterday. She was talking to someone about the building's zoning regulations, and she mentioned your name, saying you were looking for a quiet exit from the business. And my heart went cold. A quiet exit? What does that even mean? I asked, confused. I don't know. Mark admitted, but her tone was weird, secretive, and later, she was on her laptop looking at what looked like legal documents. I confronted Jess that evening as we were closing up. I tried to keep my voice casual, not wanting to sound accusatory. Hey, Mark mentioned he overheard you talking about zoning. Everything okay? Jess didn't even flinch. She turned to me, her expression a perfect mask of concern. Oh, that. I'm so glad you brought it up. I've been meaning to tell you. I was just doing some proactive research. With this area getting so popular, I think we should be prepared for any changes the city might make. I was just trying to protect our investment. She smiled, a warm, reassuring smile that had always made me trust her. You know I always have your back. She was so convincing that I felt ashamed for even doubting her. I apologized for listening to gossip, and she told me not to worry about it. But the seed of doubt had been planted. I started paying closer attention. I noticed her staying late after I'd gone home, poring over the financial records I had long since entrusted to her care. I saw her taking calls where she would walk to the far corner of the store and speak in hushed tones. The dream we built together started to feel less like a partnership and more like a territory she was trying to claim. The cracks were no longer invisible, they were spreading, and I was afraid of what would happen when the whole thing finally broke. The breaking point arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning in a stark white envelope. It was official mail, addressed to the last page, current occupant. I almost threw it into the recycling bin, assuming it was junk mail. But something made me pause. I slid it open with a letter opener from my desk. The words inside were cold, legal, and utterly terrifying. It was a formal notice from a property management firm I'd never heard of. It stated that due to a change in ownership and subsequent lease termination, the business had 60 days to vacate the premises. It was signed by a law firm on behalf of a company called Sterling Properties LLC. Sterling. That was Jessica's last name, but that couldn't be right. Her last name was Miller. Then I remembered. Sterling was her mother's maiden name, a name she'd always said sounded more prestigious. My hands started to shake. I read the letter again, and then a third time. Change in ownership, lease termination. It made no sense. My family's trust owned this building. My lease was ironclad for another 8 years. No one could terminate it. I immediately called my father, my voice trembling as I read the letter aloud to him. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Linda, he said, his voice grave. There's no change in ownership. The trust still owns the building, and your lease is perfectly intact. We haven't sold anything or spoken to any lawyers. This letter is fraudulent. Fraudulent, the word hung in the air. Who would do this? Why, then, like a series of horrifying puzzle pieces clicking into place, it all became clear. The secret meetings, the hushed phone calls, the talk of zoning, the strange legal documents on her laptop. And Sterling Properties LLC. This was Jess. This was her move. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. She wasn't just trying to outmaneuver me in the business. She was trying to physically remove me. She had created a fake company and sent a fake legal notice, hoping I would panic. She wanted me to believe I was being evicted. But to what end? What was her end game? I sat in my small office, surrounded by the books I loved, and felt the walls closing in. The betrayal was so immense, so audacious, it was hard to comprehend. This was the woman I trusted with my dream, my finances, my friendship. I looked out the office window and saw her on the shop floor, laughing with a customer, looking every bit the dedicated, charming manager. The sight made my blood run cold. She was a snake, and I had welcomed her into my home, my life, my business. The initial shock gave way to a cold, hard anger. She thought I was a naive bookworm who would crumble at the first sign of trouble. She thought she could scare me away from my own life with a single piece of paper. She had severely underestimated me. She had forgotten that librarians aren't just quiet and gentle. They are masters of research, detail, and order. And I was about to use all of those skills to uncover every last detail of her treachery. This letter wasn't an eviction notice. It was a declaration of war, and I had no intention of losing. My grief over our shattered friendship quickly hardened into resolve. I couldn't let her win. The first thing I did was secure the one piece of evidence I had, the fraudulent eviction letter. I placed it in a safe deposit box, but not before making high-resolution scans. My next move was to approach Mark. I needed an ally on the inside, and I knew he was loyal. I asked him to meet me at a coffee shop a few blocks away from the store. I laid it all out for him. The letter, my family's ownership of the building, and my suspicion that Jess was trying to force me out. Mark wasn't surprised. I knew something was wrong. He said, his expression serious. She's been careless. She leaves her email open on the counter computer sometimes when she steps away. I've seen things, Linda, emails to a lawyer, discussions about forming an LLC, and I've seen her meeting with a man in a suit. They met here, in this coffee shop, last week. He described the man, middle-aged, expensive watch, looked like a developer. This was huge. She wasn't just sending fake letters, she had a real lawyer and was meeting with real potential buyers or partners. My theory started to form. Jess had created a fake paper trail to convince a third party that she was in the process of acquiring the property. She was likely telling this developer that she was the true owner, or soon would be, and was trying to sell him the building my family owned. She was trying to sell something that wasn't hers. She was using the fraudulent eviction notice as a tool to get me out of the picture so she could complete her scam. The next step was to find out who this developer was. Mark had overheard Jess mention the name David Chen during one of her hushed phone calls. A quick online search confirmed it. David Chen was a prominent local real estate developer known for buying up historic properties and converting them into luxury condos. His firm had been buying several properties on our street. The last page was likely the last holdout on the block. Now I needed concrete proof of her dealings with him. I couldn't access her personal email, but I did have administrative access to the store's entire computer system, something Jess had likely forgotten in her arrogance. She assumed I was technically inept. That night, I went to the bookstore after she had left. I logged into the main office computer and started digging. It didn't take long. She had foolishly used the store's scanner to digitize documents. Tucked away in a temporary scan folder was a treasure trove of her deceit. There were draft agreements between Sterling Properties LLC and David Chen's development firm. There were emails where she represented herself as the sole proprietor of the last page, with full authority to sell the property. And then I found the smoking gun, a forged sales agreement for the business with my signature on it. It was a clumsy forgery, clearly traced, but to an outsider who didn't know my handwriting, it might look plausible. She had likely used one of the hundreds of documents I'd signed over the years as a template. She had built an entire house of cards, a fictional reality where she was the owner. I was on my way out, and the building was hers to sell. The sheer audacity of it left me breathless. She wasn't just trying to steal my business, she was committing serious fraud. And she was about to sell a multi-million-dollar property that she had absolutely no claim to. My plan began to form, not just to stop her, but to let her walk right into her own trap. She wanted to play business. I was about to show her how the game was really played, with all the evidence I needed, the fake letter, the scanned documents, the forged signature. I could have gone straight to the police, but that felt too simple. It wouldn't teach her the lesson she needed to learn. It wouldn't give me the satisfaction of watching her grand plan crumble in her hands by her own doing. No, I wanted her to feel the full weight of her greed and betrayal. I wanted her to think she had won, right up until the last possible second. My plan was simple but required careful execution. I would let the sale go through. First, I contacted my parents and the family lawyer who managed the trust. I explained everything, showing them the documents I had found. My father, a shrewd businessman himself, was furious on my behalf, but when I laid out my idea, a slow smile spread across his face. "Let the shark swim right into the net," he said. Our lawyer confirmed the legalities. As long as the true owners, the family trust, were orchestrating the final transaction, Jess's fraudulent dealings would be null and void, but we could use her efforts to our advantage. The plan was this. David Chen, the developer, wanted to buy the property. My family, coincidentally, had been considering selling for a while, as managing the trust was becoming a burden in their retirement. Jess had unknowingly done all the legwork for them. She had found a motivated buyer and negotiated a price. According to the documents I found, she had negotiated a sale price of $2, $5 million for the building. It was a fair market price, so my father, as the trustee, contacted David Chen directly. He introduced himself as the true owner of the property and explained the situation, that a third party, Jessica Miller, had been fraudulently misrepresenting herself. Mr. Chen was shocked and incredibly apologetic, worried he was embroiled in a criminal enterprise. My father reassured him, "Mr. Chen," he said calmly, "your offer of $2, $5 million is a good one. We, the legal owners, are prepared to accept it. However, we would like to proceed with the final closing meeting as scheduled. We would appreciate it if you played along for now. We want to ensure a mess. Miller is present to sign document. She has no authority to sign." David Chen, eager to avoid a lawsuit and still wanting the property, readily agreed. The trap was set. Jess had scheduled the final closing at a title company's office for the following Friday. She had told me she needed the day off for a personal matter. I, of course, told her to take all the time she needed. For the rest of the week, I played the part of the defeated business owner. I sighed dramatically while looking at the store's finances. I made comments about how hard it is to keep a small business afloat these days. I let her see me packing a few personal items from my desk into a box. Her sympathy was sickeningly sweet. "Don't you worry, Linda," she said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You're smart. You'll land on your feet. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise." I just looked at her and smiled a weak, sad smile. "Maybe you're right, Jess." Inside, my heart was pounding with a cold, thrilling anger. She thought she was consoling her victim. She had no idea she was talking to the architect of her downfall. The final signing was in 2 days. She was about to sign the deal of her lifetime, believing she was about to become a millionaire. She had no idea the only thing she would be earning was a one-way ticket to humiliation and legal disaster. The trap was perfectly set. All she had to do was walk into it. The morning of the signing, Jessica was glowing. She wore a tailored navy blue suit that probably cost more than a month's rent. She looked every inch the powerful businesswoman she so desperately wanted to be. "Wish me luck," she said with a conspiratorial wink as she left the bookstore. "Big day. Break a leg," I replied, my voice perfectly even. An hour later, I was sitting in a small conference room adjacent to the one where Jess was about to sign her future away. With me were my father, our family lawyer, and 2 police officers in plain clothes. David Chen had been instructed to proceed as planned until the critical moment. We could hear the low murmur of voices through the wall as the title agent went through the preliminary paperwork. In the other room, Jess was at the head of a large mahogany table. Across from her sat David Chen and his lawyer. The title agent was laying out a thick stack of documents. Jess was practically vibrating with excitement. This was it, the moment her betrayal would pay off. The moment she would trade a dusty bookstore for a multi-million-dollar fortune. The title agent slid the final signature page in front of her. "All right, MS Sterling," he said, using the name on her fraudulent LLC documents. "If you could please sign here as the seller and authorized representative of the property." Jessica picked up the expensive fountain pen she had bought for the occasion. Her hand hovered over the paper, her smile triumphant. This was her victory. She had outsmarted the quiet, trusting librarian. She had won. She pressed the pen to the paper. As the ink from her signature began to dry, the conference room door opened. My father walked in, followed by our lawyer, the 2 officers, and finally me. Jessica's head snapped up. Her triumphant smile froze, then melted into a mask of pure confusion. "Linda, Dad, what are you doing here?" she stammered, looking at my father. My father didn't say a word. He simply placed a folder on the table and opened it, revealing the deed to the building, clearly stating the owner as our family trust. He then pointed a finger at the signature line on the document Jess had just signed. "You have no authority to sign that," our lawyer stated, his voice booming in the quiet room. "This property is, and always has been, owned by the Vance Family Trust. MS Jessica Miller, or whatever name you're using today, has no ownership stake and no legal right to sell." David Chen and his lawyer leaned back in their chairs, their performance complete. The title agent, who had been briefed beforehand, simply removed the documents from the table. The color drained from Jessica's face. She looked from the deed to my face, her eyes wide with dawning horror. She finally understood. It wasn't a mistake. It was a trap. "How?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You left a trail, Jess," I said, my voice cold and steady. "The fake eviction notice, the forged signature, the scanned documents on the store's computer. You thought I was stupid. You thought I would just pack my things and disappear." One of the police officers stepped forward. "MS Jessica Miller," he said formally, "you are being detained for investigation of wire fraud, mail fraud, and forgery." Jessica stared at me, her expression a mixture of shock and pure, unadulterated hatred. The entire world she had built for herself, this grand illusion of power and wealth, had evaporated in less than 5 minutes. As the officers escorted her out of the room, her composure finally shattered. She was no longer a powerful businesswoman. She was just a common criminal, caught in her own web of lies. She had come here to sign the deal of a lifetime. Instead, she had just signed her confession. In the aftermath, everything happened quickly. Jessica was charged, and faced with the mountain of evidence I had collected, she had no choice but to plead guilty. Her dreams of a multi-million-dollar payday were replaced by the grim reality of a felony conviction, a hefty fine, and court-mandated probation. Her reputation was destroyed. The story became local news, a salacious tale of friendship, greed, and a perfectly executed downfall. With Jess gone, a strange quiet fell over the bookstore. My family did complete the sale of the building to David Chen, who, as a gesture of goodwill, gave me a 6-month rent-free period to wind down the business and sell off the inventory. The last page, my beloved sanctuary, was closing. For a moment, it felt like Jess had won after all. She had cost me my dream, but as Mark and I began the slow process of packing books into boxes, I realized she hadn't. She had destroyed a business, yes. She had shattered a friendship, but she hadn't destroyed me. In fact, she had shown me a strength I never knew I possessed. I wasn't just a quiet librarian anymore. I was a woman who could face down betrayal and win. We held a massive closing sale. The community I had built rallied around me. People came in not just to buy books, but to share stories, to offer hugs, and to thank me for the space I had created. It was a bittersweet celebration of what the last page had been. On the final day, Mark and I stood in the empty store, the shelves bare for the first time. The echo of our footsteps felt final. "So what's next?" he asked me. I looked around at the empty space, not with sadness, but with a sense of possibility. "I'm not sure," I said honestly, "but I know it will involve books." And it did. I didn't open another bookstore. The emotional and financial toll was too great. Instead, I took the substantial profit from selling the store's assets and inventory and started a nonprofit foundation. We provide books and establish small lending libraries in underserved communities, schools, and shelters. Mark became my first employee. Sometimes I think about Jessica. I don't feel anger anymore, just a kind of distant pity. She was so desperate to grab a piece of what she thought was valuable, the money, the property, that she failed to see the real value in what we already had, a thriving community, a shared passion, and a true friendship. She threw it all away for an illusion. My life is different now. It's quieter, but in many ways more fulfilling. I'm still surrounded by books, but now my work isn't about selling them. It's about sharing them. Jess tried to write me out of my own story to force an unhappy ending, but she forgot the most important rule. I am the author of my own life, and I was the one who got to turn the final page.